This and every edition of Bang the Book Radio is presented by DSI Sportsbook. If you head on over to DSI, use the promo code BTB and the number 25. Get a $25 free bet just for signing up, a 100% deposit match bonus for the sportsbook, and a 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino as well. So you can check that out over at DSI Sportsbook. 2 segments coming your way here today. The first with Mr. Joe Everett of NFL Draft Bible. Joseph, how's it going today, man?
Hanging in there, Adam. Another brutal Sunday. I just wish I bet the underdogs across the board because those dogs ate well on Sunday.
Those dogs most definitely did eat well on Sunday, including some outright upsets. The Giants had one. Chicago had one. Miami had a very surprising one as a double-digit dog. We'll talk about that one here in a few minutes. And the Jets possibly could have even pulled an outright upset over New England, but a very controversial call, kind of sealing their fate there in that one. But, Joe, let's talk about this Monday Night Football game here. As you mentioned, it's been the week of the barking dogs. We've got a big dog here in this one. Indianapolis catching 7.5. This number is kind of moving around a little bit here this morning. But Marcus Mariota going to go for Tennessee. But as you and I were talking about before the show here, who knows what we're going to get from Mariota.
How healthy he is currently. That's what's going to decide this game, in my opinion. I mean, that hamstring couldn't be worse for a quarterback that depends on his feet in that zone read, and they can't run it with Mariota. Well, the Colts defense or any defense worth of salt is going to know they're going to stack aside and run blitz DeMarco Murray, Derrick Henry, whoever's in that backfield. It's just there's no way that offense can work without the threat at quarterback that creates on that backside. You just have to honor it, and when you don't, that just eliminates one from the numbers. The Titans also, I mean, even with Mariota, there's not a lot of speed on this offense. I mean, Decker, Matthews, these are possession wideouts, and sure, they counted on Corey Davis to add a little bit of that element and stretch the field for them, but as it is, I mean, sure, Matthews is a good player, but they're dependent a lot on their tight ends. That's basically where they're going to win in this game, too. They've got 2 guys that can move, 2 guys that can really run. Tennessee, that's where they just win a lot of matchups because there's not a lot of linebackers that could run with that. Rookie Jonnu Smith, I mean, that kid has some speed about him. And Delanie Walker, I mean, I know everyone's seen that. And we're talking about John Bostic, Antonio Morrison. That's going to be a problem I would anticipate. And even Mariota at half strength, if he can just survive long enough, I think the linebackers are an issue. So I've got to assume Indianapolis is going to run extra safeties, a little more T.J. Green in a joker role, but I'd look for Malik Hooker to really kind of isolate maybe on Delanie Walker. Those 2 should be paired up. If there's a premium matchup in this game, there really isn't. But that's one you're certainly going to see. Once again, I'm not sure the Titans have a real threat outside, and that's where the issue is. They're just going to have to bludgeon teams with their running game, and that may not work. Colts on offense, though, I mean, it's kind of similar. They're going where Jacoby Brissett takes them. I've liked what I've seen, honestly, and just bottom line, I think the Colts just won on that trade. They ditched Dorsett. The Pats are now responsible for his deal, and now say what you want about Andrew Luck, but in the future, the Colts might just have 2 quarterbacks, which is not the worst thing to have, especially in the stock market of free agency in the NFL. You could always sell a quarterback, and I think just in this situation, though, we're still talking about a Tennessee secondary that's beatable. They gave up a bunch of big plays to Houston. John Cyprien is still out of this lineup, and the Colts have some speed, like the dynamic type of offensive players that really make it bright out there. That the Titans don't have. Well, Indy has Marlon Mack. That's a real X factor. I know the listeners remember him from South Florida. That's game-breaking speed, and that creates a perimeter responsibility for these defenders. I mean, you have to make sure Mack doesn't get to the edge because he's going to keep running for a long while if he breaks that contain. So Titans linebacker is going to have a problem here. There's still elite speed with T.Y. Hilton. I don't care what you say. I mean, that kind of deep speed just threatens the defense. Once again, makes them honest. Jack Doyle's back in the lineup. So the Tennessee secondary back half and backers, they're going to have some problems running with these guys. Probably the big crux for Indy, though, Jack Mewhort now done for the year. Indy's going to shuffle guys around. The right side's just I don't know what to say, a jungle gym. Like, there's guys just coming in and out, swinging off of bars. I think the one stable we've actually had is Jeremy Bunovich has started 5 games now at left guard. Look, that's actually pretty good. So I don't know what they do if it's Joe Haig coming back inside from right tackle, put LaRaven Clark out there, but that promises to be a big issue in this game. So there's quite a few question marks coming into tonight for me.
Yeah, there are a lot of question marks on both sides here. And, of course, the health of Marcus Mariota is certainly the biggest one. I mean, you look at this Tennessee offense, 350 yards against the Raiders, 390 against Jacksonville, 420 against Seattle. You lose Mariota in that Houston game, and we all saw what happened there in that one. And then, of course, just 188 yards against the Miami Dolphins last week, which all of a sudden that loss doesn't look as bad given what Miami did last week there, or this past weekend with the Atlanta Falcons. But, for Tennessee here, I mean, look, this running game still 4.8 yards per carry. DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry both running the ball effectively. Mariota's legs in the running game are very, very important to this team. 20 carries for $116, 3 touchdowns, 5.8 average. They need that extra dynamic. They need that element. And just because Mariota's back in the lineup, it is an upgrade for this team. I mean, Mariota with a club foot and a severed leg would still be better than Matt Castle at quarterback. But the problem here is that we don't know if Mariota can get out and run. And the question then becomes, for this Indianapolis defense here, does Ted Monachino worry a lot about Mariota getting out and running? Does he put his defensive ends and some of his linebackers in contain? Or does he go ahead and charge up to the line, try and stuff and fill those run gaps? I think that's really what the key to this game is from an X's and O's standpoint is how much attention does Indianapolis pay to the threat of Mariota running, because that can open up some other things for Tennessee and allow them to move the football. Now, if Indianapolis says, hey, if Mariota beats us with his legs, so be it, I think they can have a lot of success here because they do stop the run at a pretty good rate, only allowing 3.9 yards per carry this season. And that Tennessee pass game just doesn't give you a whole lot to get excited about. So, in looking at this number here, I mean, I understand the desire to back Tennessee with Mariota because they've been so much better of a team with him. But still, he's nowhere near 100%. And getting 7.5 here in this one, I think Indianapolis has to be worth a look.
It's Indy or nothing for me there because just like what you said, that I think they will just go in with that game plan. We'll stack, we'll press, we'll shut down the run, and if Marcus beats us, that was our gamble. We will lose that, like in their perspective. But I don't see it happen. I think it's just too far from missing. And once again, hamstring that saps your explosiveness. That really kind of discounts what he can do outside the pocket if he does something. So, and this plays into the Colts corners' favor. I mean, they're not speed guys, they're physical press corners. Vontae Davis against Rashard Matthews, I dare say he could win that. I mean, that's a decent matchup just because these guys similar strengths, but once again, not having that perimeter element, missing that, I think that kind of favors with the Colts. I don't know. Well, just they don't have to do things they can't do. They can't run, but they could beat you in a phone booth. They could kill you from close within if you can't run, and that's kind of what we're looking at. I don't want to say a wounded animal in the Titans, but I think it's very suspect, and I'd have to agree with you. If there is a side that I'm looking at, it would be Indy and not Tennessee.
All right, before we move away from this game and look at some of the things that happened over the weekend, let's talk a little bit about the prognosis here for the Colts going forward. They obviously played tonight against Tennessee. Short week with a little bit of a turnaround there to take on Jacksonville. At least that game is at home here for the Colts. So they will be able to get home, get back to practice on some sort of practice on Tuesday, and then, of course, really get after it on Wednesday. What's the latest on Andrew Luck that you're hearing? I mean, is there a chance that he'll be able to go here against Jacksonville this week?
Mystery on Luck. I think a limited session early in the week and then nothing for the rest of the week of practice. I just don't see a scenario that's likely where he comes back before the bye, and even at that point, what he comes back for. There's just multiple just rumors. You could hear anything from, he's going to retire, or he's walking away from the game, or he's demanding. I mean, it's just like I said, you hear a little bit of everything around here in Indianapolis, but I stand by that this shoulder was a lot more serious than they had originally planned. The rehab didn't go as expected, and I'm really anticipating we don't see him for the rest of the year. That's just kind of where I'm with it. And also, I believe Chris Ballard, that's not the worst thing in the world for him. A new GM probably wouldn't mind if we went 4-12, 3-13, what have you. It increases the draft pick. He could also get rid of Pagano, bring in his staff, his men, his scheme. So if we don't see Luck at all the rest of the season, it would not surprise me.
All right, well, let's look back at what we saw here in Week 6 of the NFL season, beginning with this Miami-Atlanta game. My one loss in the Super Contest this weekend was on the Atlanta Falcons. They were laying 11.5 in the Super Contest, got steamed up to 14 out there at several shops in the betting market. They get off to a 17-0 start. You're thinking, okay, this looks like it's a pretty good spot for Atlanta here going into the second half. Miami team that has done nothing offensively, now they're in a 17-point hole. Well, all of a sudden, Atlanta forgot how to play football. They had about 90 total yards in the second half of this game. Dolphins come away with the 20-17 win, scoring 20 unanswered points. Help me out with this one, Joe. What did you see in this game?
Well, I had to watch this one over because I've now been part of the two biggest collapses in most recent Falcons history. This was my survivor pick also for the week as well. But the Falcons lost the line of scrimmage. That's just both sides of the ball, and that's what I saw when I rewatched this. People are going to see the final score and just assume the Falcons blew this game, which they did. And classic look-ahead spot, which it was. Patriots game coming up, but I think they had real problems blocking Ndamukong Suh. And if anybody does watch this, I swear he got away with 3 offside penalties that were not called. I mean, I understand anticipated snap count, but that's just offsides and cheating. I mean, he's stealing cadence and before the ball snapped, in my opinion. But be that as it may, the Falcons, I think they should not have been up 17-0 at halftime. I mean, Miami was moving the ball. Jay Ajayi was running well. It's just some first half mistakes. There was Tunzel had a false start. That put him behind the chains. Cutler forces a 20-yard pass in scoring position, and Deion Jones just made an athletic backside play. It was, that's his game. He's just so fast. He's got great accelerate, and it's also Carew. I don't know that he was running the right route. I think that was a receiver. But second half, Jay Ajayi, he's a force. He just came out. That O-line actually played a good game. I've been really critical of Tunzel. I expected a lot more out of him coming out of Ole Miss. It was just kind of a rare bird at left tackle. Basketball skills, I think, athletically, it's just putting the pieces together. I think he did some good things with pass protection, and Anthony Steen is turning it on at left guard, number 65. I think he played a really nice game. But, Jay Cutler, sure, tale of two halves for him with the turnovers and then the touchdowns. But I really think the Miami O-line, they just beat up on a more talented Falcons defensive front. Cody Parkey, the kicker, you got to shout him out for those 2 clutch kicks. But I think, Falcons just didn't look like a team coming off a bye, and there's no halftime adjustments, and I'm starting to really look at Steve Sarkisian. Like, where is he at with this team? The game plan in the second half, I do not believe we saw enough Julio and enough Devontae Freeman. I mean, they were having some success getting those runs. It just finally blew up for a 44-yard game for Freeman. But this, you honestly have to respect the Dolphins' defense. They came out lit. Rashard Jones, I think Atlanta native, played out of his mind in this game. And, defensive line for the Dolphins showed up.
I think that one of the things that we have to look at here and try to figure out is that you've got a Miami team that's now 3-2. And offensively, this Miami team has been atrocious. It was one of the reasons I went against them in the Super Contest here this week. 4 yards per play on the season. So nothing explosive whatsoever. And you start looking at this situation, you start looking at this record, you look at the fact that they did beat the Falcons. Like you said, second half becomes a look-ahead spot with that 17-0 lead. Still inexcusable to blow that game. But how long can Miami sustain this? I mean, when you look at what this defense is doing, they're really carrying this football team. on the offensive side, they've got guys. They have weapons. They have the ability to actually improve this team offensively if Jay Cutler can figure out how to throw some guys open, if they can fix some run blocking schemes to get Jay Ajayi a few more big holes. Like, I feel like at this point, Miami could crater, or Miami could suddenly pick up some helium and wind up being, a team we talk about in a couple of weeks as possibly being a wild card contender. What do you think, Joe? What do you think long term for this team?
Well, I think, one game in a vacuum here, it's still, there's going to be some really tough matchups. Right? We'll see how they look against the Baltimore defense, Carolina's defense. But, yeah, a matchup against the Jets, a matchup against Oakland. This is a situation for that offense to show some of what they've accomplished. And, yeah, I'd say there's a small buy sign on them. Definitely in the respect that Jay Cutler now is kind of through his preseason, really. And, I would look at the preseason as his training camp. He's more up to speed in that respect. And also it takes lines time to gel. I think there was definitely an adjustment period for Tunsil at tackle. He played guard all last year. Steen, I don't believe, started off the season healthy this year. So it's been an adjustment on that side of the ball, but I think they're starting to catch up a little bit to the offense. So, yeah, I'm definitely looking for value on them going ahead. But as far as making the postseason, I don't know. I mean, that's getting past Buffalo. I like what Buffalo's got going on, and, New England's not going anywhere. But, yeah, I would have to admit I'm looking for value spots on this Dolphins team because I'll have to fess up. This is a team I kind of liked going into the season. Before Tannehill got hurt, I thought there's, some elements of this team that are really strong, particularly at wide receiver and on defense on that line. There's some difference makers. When you've got pass rushers and wide receivers that are threats, I mean, you're in games.
All right, well, the Green Bay Packers lost more than a football game here this past weekend, falling to the Vikings 23-10. They also lost Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers just 2 of 4, 18 yards passing here in this game, and then he winds up leaving with the broken collarbone. So you go to Brett Hundley. Brett Hundley, 18 of 33, 3 interceptions, 1 touchdown pass here, but it really wasn't a good look for Hundley. Mike McCarthy came out after the game, gave him a vote of confidence, effectively said, hey, he's our guy. Well, he's their guy. So what do you think going forward here for Green Bay?
It's going to be rough. I mean, like you said, they lost a lot more in the game. This could be a season, and I just want to address, people are, that's outlawed hit. Anthony Barr's got to be suspended or fined, and I don't know. I mean, that's kind of a clean hit, and if you eliminate some of that out of the game, where are we? I mean, he drove him into the ground, yes, but if you're griping about anything, I would say the timing, the lateness is most of the egregiousness. But, yeah, I should be more mad than anyone. I had the Packers -3. Rodgers is my quarterback in 2 leagues for fantasy. The Packers were my Super Bowl pick, but I'd still argue that that's part of the game. I mean, it is what it is. Look how Jameis Winston got taken down in a similar nature. We see this happening with quarterbacks. It's just, I don't know that you can take it out, but I still think there's too much talent on this Packers offense not to wait for the right time and scoop up a little value. I think particularly on overs. They were able to make some plays against a really solid Vikings defense, and the problem with that adjustment is, Hundley's coming in, and it's Aaron's game plan, and they don't really have anything specialty-wise ready for Brett and, his skills. So I think crux of the matter, and you could just, in that game, Mike Zimmer really licking his chops, sending all kinds of defensive blitzes, and that's what's going to be most of the problem going forward. I think defensive coordinators, they're going to get real happy on stacking sides and just trying to confound them because they'll just, if Brett Hundley burns us, that's fine, but they won't believe it until they see it. So I think there will definitely be a tough adjustment plan, but I also think a new Packers offense is definitely on its way. They have to change things and tailor-make it more to Hundley's strengths. It's not that Aaron wasn't an athletic quarterback. It's just Hundley's a little bit more athletic, and where he thrives is throwing on the run Course defenses are going to know that, but we're going to see more bootlegs. I think they're a little bit, more extra protection. That's a big issue where things will change, but I don't want to say option, but we're going to see some of those plays with Aaron Jones and Hundley to where it's just a zone read. So I would say definitely a big adjustment period, and if we see some sloppy games coming up, sure, but I think they're still going to score points. There's still holes in this Packers defense. I would be looking to sneak in some overs where the books think, well, they don't have the same offense. We're going to take those totals down. I don't know that they're going to go down. That's my question.
Well, if you look out there in the betting market now, New Orleans is a 5.5-point road favorite at Lambeau Field, which is kind of remarkable to think about. And this number was actually on the look-ahead lines at Westgate, Green Bay -6.5. So we saw that number get reposted, Green Bay -3.5, so a 10-point adjustment to Aaron Rodgers here, and that's not really a big surprise. I mean, he is probably the most valuable player in the NFL from a point spread standpoint. But now we're seeing even more money piling in on New Orleans, and because Aaron Rodgers is out, and obviously that's, clearly significant. But Green Bay also lost 3 offensive linemen in this game, both tackles, Bakhtiari and Bulaga, who suited up on the same day for the first time this season, and they both go out in this game. Lane Taylor left this game. They lost several members of the secondary. They've had guys hurt pretty much all year long. So it's not just Rodgers. I mean, we're talking about Green Bay possibly missing 4 offensive starters, 3 on the line, plus Rodgers. Ty Montgomery, of course, has been banged up as well, so we could even extend that out to 5 offensive starters. Several guys in the secondary. This is not a good week to catch the New Orleans Saints either, who just scored 52 on Detroit, although they did have 3 defensive touchdowns in that game. But, man, for Green Bay here, I don't know what they can do with a quick turnaround. And that bye week after the Saints game looks like an absolute godsend at this point if they want to save their season.
At least the schedule makers gave them a break because they haven't got many other breaks. The offensive line is going to, like I said, the adjustment period, it's going to be a pretty steep learning curve there for Hundley because he'll be running for his life. But after this bye, I still believe they're going to be in games, and I think, like I said, it's going to be a more simplistic offense, and sure, you're not going to get these 12 men on the field, the audibles, and the basic broken plays that Rodgers thrives in and can pick defenses apart. It's just going to be in a different nature, but Hundley's a chain mover. If they could run his kind of scheme and maybe take a page out of the Houston Texans book in the respects of, not a lot of multiple reads, just max protect, get what they've done with Watts. Not saying that Hundley's a Deshaun Watson by any means. But, yeah, like I said, after this, that they're pinned down, injured, but after this bye week, I tell you, I'd look for, maybe some, team totals on the Packers that with people anticipating them struggling to score. I still think with all this talent at wideout, this scheme, they'll find ways to put points up.
All right, so the New York Giants picked up a win here. They were a double-digit dog in the Mile High City against Denver. Giants got outgained in this game 412 to 266, but the defense, with 3 takeaways, Eli Manning and the offense didn't turn the football over at all. So we've got a Giants victory here. They got a pick 6 from Janoris Jenkins here in this game. And, look, for the Giants here, they've been close. This is a team that has played competitively throughout the season. The defense has really carried this team, and the defense is going to have to carry this team because they're missing a ton of talent at wide receiver. Obviously, Odell Beckham Jr. and Brandon Marshall being the 2 biggest guys there. But the previous 3 losses for the Giants, 3 points to the Eagles, 2 points to the Bucs, 5 points to the Chargers. One of these games was coming, but I think it was very surprising to see it here on the road against Denver.
Yeah, in the altitude, and it looked like the Broncos were the ones huffing and puffing. I think Ben McAdoo finally did his job and actually played head coach instead of offensive coordinator. It's not just giving up the play calling. He managed the team. I think 3 guys that won this game was Janoris Jenkins, still one of the best in the business, but in this specific case, last week walks off the field while there's still, 3 knees to take, and the whole controversy behind that. He manages Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie and says, you know what, take a walk. We're going to take this road trip. We'll revisit this. I think managing that, Jason Pierre-Paul was a force. And really, once William Turner got in there, he really abused that poor kid. And I love Billy Turner from North Dakota State, but shouldn't have been out there. And then moving Justin Pugh over to the right tackle spot, that wasn't the elixir for this sick offensive line that's been ailing all year long. I mean, Bobby Hart's got no business at tackle, and, Pugh played tackle at Syracuse. It's almost you're wondering what took so long. And I think the biggest takeaway from this whole game, being a bit of a Broncos fan over here, Von Miller was MIA last night. I don't remember seeing him. Justin Pugh made a lot of money in this game, especially when you consider he's a 2018 free agent. He's in a walk year. All he has to do is tell his agent to pop in the film against Von Miller and start counting the commas, I think. But be that as it may, it's still Ben McAdoo not calling the plays and finally delegating. I think that was magic. Mike Sullivan, kudos to him. I think really it was timing. They still ran that basic slant, a ton of Packers stuff that you see, that basic offense, but there was a lot of screens finally. They get Evan Ingram matched up against Denver's lousy coverage linebackers and some quick outs, some back shoulders, options to where maybe Eli doesn't have all that time. I know it sounds like simple. Why couldn't McAdoo do this? But sometimes you need to step back, observe the situation, and I don't know. It's just simplifying things for just Mike Sullivan calling the plays, taking that away from McAdoo. I really believe that's what made this whole thing work. And Denver's offense getting behind the chains and turning the ball over didn't help anything. I mean, it's both sides of the ball, but that change, I think they've got to go with that. And I'm a superstitious type. I would copy everything they did this week. Routine leading up to the game. Even those pregame workouts Eli ran with the wide receivers on the routes he likes and just like how to run them. I would just try and mock that little coaching session because clearly it helped. It looked like Peyton working out with his wide receivers like every game in Indy. Dallas Clark, Austin Collie, Reggie Wayne. These guys weren't the best of players, but it's on the same page. We're all creatures of habit, and I'd go out of my way to repeat what they did this week. I see some good things coming up for the Giants, just what they did without those wide receivers. I mean, what was Tavares King doing before this game? Probably clocking in a shift at Walmart late night stocking. I have a total respect for that coaching job Mike Sullivan, who's got a background as a wide receivers coach, mind you, did this game. I'm playing Seattle. They've got issues protecting the passer. Jason Pierre-Paul gets in Russell Wilson's face. You've got a little bit of a game, and I think the Seahawks let the Rams move the ball up and down the field in their last game. So, I think maybe there's a little bit of value, Giants, heading forward. If they're getting points at home, I wouldn't mind taking those points.
All right, let's look at this from the other side, though, and let's talk about the Denver Broncos here. Trevor Siemian going for an MRI after the game on his non-throwing shoulder, probably an AC joint sprain. We'll see what he's able to do here. Emmanuel Sanders, Isaiah McKenzie, Demaryius Thomas, all of them banged up here after this game. We'll see if those guys are able to get back in the lineup here in short order. But, for Denver, I mean, this was the concern. The offense was the concern for this football team. We all expected the defense to be really good. That has come to fruition here. But offensively, I mean, if Trevor Siemian can't go next week against the Chargers, you're down to Brock Osweiler, which is an interesting story in and of itself. Denver, not much of a running game here in this one. Neither C.J. Anderson nor Jamal Charles could find holes. Anderson, 9 carries for 17 yards. He hasn't really found a whole lot of running room here at this point. What about Denver going forward? Again, a 3-2 team here, kind of in that mix for one of the wild card spots in the AFC. Is this a sign of some really big problems to come with the Chargers on the road, the Chiefs on the road, the Eagles on the road? 3 straight road games here coming up for Denver.
No doubt about it. It's and really, like you said, there were these issues coming up. We talked in the preseason. It's like, wow, this Broncos offense has a chance to be really bad, and this was one of their really bad moments. Not just I think everyone knows the Emmanuel Sanders injury here, but Menelik Watson left this game, and that's when things got out of hand with Jason Pierre-Paul just starting to live in the backfield. And without Emmanuel, it's basically Demaryius Thomas, and they better pray Simeon comes out of it, because it doesn't matter if it's Brock, it doesn't matter if it's Paxton Lynch. We've talked about it again. I believe they're the same guy, just switched at birth type of thing. They're both too gawky, they're uncoordinated. Neither of them has even zip code accuracy. It's just I really feel bad for John Elway, because he basically drafted the same guy 2 times in a row that can't play.
All right, one more team to talk about here as we take a look back at Week 6. That's the San Francisco 49ers. So the 49ers are 0-6 on the year, but they are 4-2 against the spread. I think we can throw out that first game against Carolina because it was the first real action under new head coach Kyle Shanahan. So I think that one's kind of the outlier here. Since then, San Francisco lost by 3 at Seattle, 2 on Thursday night to the Rams, 3 at Arizona, 3 at Indianapolis in overtime, and then 2 against Washington here this past weekend. So they've played 4 road games out of their last 5 games. They've lost all of them by 3 points or less. This is a really competitive football team that just can't make enough plays at the end. They're going to go with C.J. Beathard for the foreseeable future. Look, you got to give this team a ton of credit for being very competitive, being a good bet against the spread. Do they get over this hump here at some point? How do you think they stack up against Dallas this week?
I like the matchup. Anybody that thinks this team's tanking, they're dead wrong. You just talked about their hard luck games, 3 or fewer losses in every one. They're trading away veterans. They outright cut Navarro Bowman. How will they stop teams on defense? And it's I think everyone buying in. And Greg Saleh, I think, is their coordinator. Everyone's hustling. They're forcing turnovers. And really, they're getting guys that are good fits for the scheme. Ray Armstrong is Saleh. He worked in Jacksonville. This is the Telvin Smith. This is the Bobby Wagner, that highly athletic chase backer that fits right in that scheme. And now they're finally getting Reuben Foster, first-rounder, healthy. So they could run with teams, and their front 4 is huge. So I really like that whole front 7, the way it's developing. The issue going forward is they still have problems at corner. They'll continue to get beat deep. There's going to be chunk plays that they suffer at the hands of athletic wide receivers that just, they jump over and they're going to make plays. But I think you've got a bunch of young guys in here. Even on offense, I don't think C.J. Beathard's all that bad. He's not all that great, but Kirk Cousins likely going to be their quarterback after next year. But this year, I think that Iowa connection is just going to show. Beathard to George Kittle, and that's where the real revelation. And I'll have to fess up, I did not see this at Iowa, and this is a big reason why they let Vance McDonald walk. They've got the future in George Kittle. You knew he was a terrific blocker, but as a playmaking receiver, I just didn't see a lot of this at Iowa, what he's been able to do, just some jump ball plays. I think they've really got the number 1 going to the future. They're going to feature him in the passing game, and he's just a talented, well-rounded football player. I've seen some clips of him destroying people in the running game. So Kyle Shanahan's getting the pieces on offense, but where I think they're doing is, like it's Greg Saleh, he's convincing these kids. They're all buying in on the scheme. They're all drinking the Kool-Aid. And, you took the words right out of my mouth, Adam. If without Ezekiel Elliott, a Dallas team, the 49ers, I'm looking to on the buy sign at San Francisco at this rate. I don't think these close losses and these hard luck losses are phony. This is a young team that just they don't know any better than just to go out there and try and get a job for next year.
I think it's really impressive what they did in that game against Washington. And I don't know if it's going to get enough credit, but they were on back-to-back road overtime games against the Cardinals and Colts and effectively played almost an entire 5th period in that game against the Colts. And then go all the way out to Washington and still have enough to hang around in that game. That's really, really impressive for them. Now, of course, there's a chance that balloon kind of pops a little bit this week and Dallas just runs them over at home. And that certainly is something that could happen. especially with another long road trip out to Philadelphia coming up after that. So the schedule has not done San Francisco any favors here. But the fact that, they're improving at the margins, they're improving with the details here under Kyle Shanahan, you got to love that. And Kyle Shanahan's a guy that, regular listeners of the show know that you and I love him. We're both big fans of what he can do with a football team. And also, he's learning. I mean, this is a guy that's a great offensive mind, obviously comes from a significant coaching tree. He's got it in the bloodlines. But he said as much in the preseason. He goes, look, this is different for me. This is something I have to adjust to. This is something I have to figure out. And, they don't have a win yet. But, man, he's figuring it out because they've been in every game here so far. I know they haven't toughest schedule necessarily. The Cardinals are, having a lot of problems. The Colts are what they are, as we talked about already. But, man, at some point, all of this effort, all of these close games, all of these tweaks, the development of the playbook on both sides of the ball, all of this stuff is going to pay off here. And I think that this 49ers team is going to continue to be a good bet against the spread. I mean, I don't know how quickly the market's going to adjust here to this, especially as you look this week. Again, no Ezekiel Elliott for Dallas. They have plenty of weapons otherwise. But San Francisco's catching 6 at home. First home game they've played, since that Thursday nighter against the Rams, and it looks like they're not getting much respect. So, I hope for their sake and for that fan base as well, they can really keep this thing going.
Oh, and I like you said, I look for them to. And I'm a firm believer, if it's not Kyle Shanahan, if it's Bill Belichick, you find coaches that are organized, that you believe in them and their scheme, and Kyle's going to get it figured out. There's some veteran help here. I mean, Pierre Garçon helping the rest of these receivers, that's your coach on the field, and a big reason why they signed him. He's not just still a really great player making the difference. It's also in the classroom where he's helping to teach. I think Carlos Hyde on another guy, kind of a walk-off contract year situation. It doesn't matter if it's this team or the next team. He's putting good film out there no matter what, and I think they've discovered a little weapon here in Matt Breida. That's another guy where kind of similar to Marlon Mack. If you get him on the edge, Breida's going to go a ways. I mean, just had a bad last season at Georgia Southern, and that's the only reason. I blame Tim Summers. That's the only reason Breida goes undrafted, and that's, hey, we got him at College Gridiron Showcase, so that's one in our back pocket. But I think there's weapons on this 49ers team. They're discovering just as the season goes on, and like I said, I love what I've seen out of George Kittle. I think that's going to be a kind of a big part of their offense going forward. And, yeah, they've just got some guys they can rely on offensively. And this front seven, what I've seen, that they're adapting to the Seattle-style defense that's being installed. I didn't think they'd adapt this quickly. So if they could shore up that secondary and get some more help at corner, I think they're really going to have – that's going to be a strength of their team. I mean, I certainly hope so. They've spent the draft picks for it to be.
Joe Everett from NFL Draft Bible. What's going on over there at the website right now, Joe?
Oh, we're doing our daily scouting report series. So like I said last week, you're going to get a new prospect every single day at the website. Our game previews, we've got the weekly podcast. It's either Thursday or Friday, depending on the week. And, of course, like I said, College Gridiron Showcase, we're doing the conference calls. We're bringing you the small school players that you need to know from college football. So, yeah, check it all out at NFLDraftBible.com.
And, of course, late Thursday nights and on into Friday, Joe does his college football totals best bets piece for us over at BangTheBook.com. You can follow Joe on Twitter at Joe W. Everett and then at NFL Draft Bible. Joe, thank you so much for your time, man. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next week, bud.
All right, looking forward to it.